Yeah, there we go. All right, so welcome to this week's session on building sector management. And tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss topic 2, unit 2, which is specifically going to deal with assignment number 2, question number 2. So you should find tonight really helpful. Welcome back, Tim. We missed you there. So all the little signs and stuff that you see on the recording, that's the annotate function that we have. So at any time, if you guys want to draw some stuff on the screen, or if you want to draw my attention to something, just go ahead and do it. As I said, totally informal. All right, just a quick question. Now that assignment number 1 has been submitted and out of the way, have any of you guys started looking at assessment item number 2 yet?
Well, not quite yet. I've just been reading through the notes. I only just finished the first portion of the second topic.
All right. Okay. No, that's fine. What you'll see is there's a little bit of time between now and when the assignment is due. So it's only due in January. So you guys should be able to push it quite a bit before you go on leave, and then those few days in January, if you want to spend some more quality time on it, I suggest you try and take some leave as well from uni, and just do the family stuff over December. So that's in any case what I will do. I'll still be in touch, but every now and again you have to sort of switch off. All right, so
Is it sorry
mhm.
sorry is it due in January or in December? Because the course profile shows the 12th of December.
It does. All right, hold on a sec. I've got the course profile right here. Oh yeah, you're right. It's actually due.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, no, you're right. I made a mistake there. It is due on the 12th of December. So you don't have a lot of time between now and when the next one is due. Oh yes, so now I remember the reason why I did this. It's to give you guys feedback before the 16th. Alright, so that's why I had to make it so close. So let's just see. Assignment number 3 is therefore due only the 22nd of January. Alright, so sorry about that. That was my mistake. You guys are right. It is due the 12th of December. Alright. So tonight's session will then therefore become really handy because I'm basically going to give you question number 2 if you don't really already have it. I'm sure you guys have Googled it. Some of you guys, George, I know you've been asking questions about the terms and stuff. So we'll go through those just briefly. Alright. Alright, so let's get going. At any point, just questions, just go for it, and that should make it easier for us. Alright, so let's talk about teamwork. When we talk about teamwork in the industry, it's typically really important for us because we deal with lots and lots of people, and of course lots and lots of teams, and we have this on a daily basis. So is there an I in team? Yes, specifically it would seem that way. So if we look at the guys who work for Apple, I'm sure one of these days they're going to bring out an application that's called iTeam or something like that, to just further their brand a little bit. I recently bought myself an iPhone and an iPad just to be funny, and I'm going to use that to stay in touch with you guys during the December holiday period. So we'll see how that works. I'm also going to travel remotely, so hopefully I'll be able to stay in contact. Alright, so there we go. It's an individual skill at the end of the day, and it's important for us. Hello Annette, welcome to the session tonight. Once again, I'm not sure if do you want to try talking tonight? Annette has just joined us. Oh, there we go. Annette says hello to everybody, so there we go. Alright, Annette, at any point, if you have any questions, just go for it. Right, so if we look at the human processes now, HRM or human resource management, when it comes to the construction industry and our sector, is really important because we deal with people continuously. Now, in your job, if you're a building surveyor or a construction manager or a building designer or a property specialist, it's always going to be about people. It's not about goods and tools and stuff like that. It's always about people who you know, what you can influence, and that's how you're going to find your next job as well. It's not really, eventually it might be because of something that you can do, but in the short term it might be more because of the people that you know that's going to give you those contacts. So the social networking sites like LinkedIn, Facebook, and all of those, they become or they start playing a real important role when it comes to networking, finding new opportunities further down the road. So remember that we use people to execute our projects. There was a movie once with Danny DeVito. It's called, I think it was called OPM, or Other People's Money. And typically it's really other people's resources that we are using when it comes to HRM. So skills and attributes, important for us. Can you learn all the skills and attributes that you need as a professional in this industry? Yes, you can. There's plenty of training that you can do, but it's also a process that you have to go through all of the just experience. You just have to spend time. It's like riding a bike or riding a horse. To master that skill, you have to sit in the saddle. Alright, so if you're going to try and buy a new motorbike, make sure that you spend lots and lots of time in the saddle, because that's how you pick up the experience. And the same with this industry that we're in. The more time you spend, the more comfortable you become, and of course the easier you conduct yourself. Right, so personalities are different. If I take it, we've got quite a number of people tonight in the room. If I present all of you guys with the same problem or the same question, I most probably will get 6 different answers, just because of the background that you've built up over the years, because of the area that you grew up in, the schools that you went into, and of course the work that you now do. Alright, so that brings us back to another discussion point, which is called the Delphi technique, and that's where we solve problems by taking a bunch of experts, putting them in the same room and saying, alright, come up with a single solution. Alright, so these guys will typically work together and find a solution for us at the end. Alright, so these factors, sometimes they are really difficult to do, but we can manage them. And of course, as a project manager or team leader, you can influence people. Alright, there's different ways of influencing people, and if you look at the question that we've got there, question number 2 specifically, authority, management styles, and leadership. That's how you're going to influence the people that work with you on a daily basis in your team. Alright, so there's also examples of abusive power, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Alright, so this one is a really interesting little slide that I've got there, and it's basically looking at the different personalities and behavior of people that we have, and hopefully you'll be able to find yourself somewhere in this graph. And it's basically a mapping tool that you can use to say, alright, am I going to be really task orientated, really work orientated, or am I more a sort of a social person? And of course there's no right or wrong. Typically what we try and do is be balanced. Not always possible. Depends on once again our experience and how we grew up in the past. Alright, so for instance, if I look at Tim, I'm not sure where he fits into this. Tim, if you would say, are you more task orientated, or are you more people or socially orientated?
I'm more task orientated.
Alright, so you're going towards this side of the scale over here. Let's just see. Oh, chose the wrong little. There we go. So over there, or maybe sort of in that area over there, more task orientated. So saying that, it means that you are going to focus a lot more on work, maybe take some work home over weekends, which can have an impact on the rest of the balance of your life. If you're a more social creature over here, you sort of start thinking about the avoider scheme, no work and no play. You just function in a low-key manner. So ideally, what we try and get in our teams is somebody that's sort of in the middle, that can go out as a part of a team member, or as part of a team, can also do a few maybe a few beers on the weekend, maybe do that team building effect that we always see. So just a quick question for you guys. When we launch a new project and we have a kickoff meeting, are kickoff meetings really effective, or are they just an excuse to get a few drinks on the table and get everybody going in that sense? What do you guys think? Yep, anybody? Oh, okay, so George, he said social. All right. I tend to agree. My experience of kickoff parties is basically that everybody gets drunk because the project pays for the entertainment. Right. So make sure that when you use it well. If we think about this compromiser at the bottom there, um, it's difficult to fall into that category. Not easy to apply yourself there. You will typically find that you will either be towards the one side, as Tim said, or be on the social side. All right. So I tend to be a little bit on the social side, but I think sometimes I can be a little bit more task oriented. It depends on the pressure that you're in. So, for instance, if the assignment is due on Monday, the 12th of December, most probably that Sunday and Saturday beforehand, the 10th and 11th of December, I'll be really task orientated and I won't entertain any social activities during that time. So it might be that we can adjust to that situation. All right, so we might be able to compromise. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Principles of leadership. The question talks about leadership, project management, how do we deal with it? And if we talk about leadership, is it something that you can teach people or are they born with it? It's another question similar to entrepreneurship. Are entrepreneurs born or can we make them? Right, so that's a question that you guys can discuss and think about. Maybe that's one for the forum that we can talk about. So George, anytime if you have anything to say, just jump in there, go for it, and that goes for everybody, of course. Don't wait for me to give you an opportunity.
Okay, no worries.
All right, great. All right, so leadership versus the management. Obviously, leadership will involve plan and monitoring of the people and the activities that we have to go through, accountable for the total effort. And over here, when we talk about accountability, we have to think about accountability over there. And of course, the second one that we have to think about is responsibility. So what's the difference between accountability and responsibility? Obviously, responsibility you can delegate, accountability you cannot delegate. All right, so easy way to remember that. A comes before R in the alphabet, and therefore A sits on top of R. A cannot be delegated, R can be delegated. All right, so that's just a way that I use to remember those things. Delegation and control. What's the effect of delegation and control? Do you find it difficult to delegate? Let's say, for instance, Tim, you guys, or Raymond, any of you, bring in a new cadet into your company to start working there. Do you immediately trust the work that the cadet is doing, or do you find that you actually now have your workload doubled up because you have to still do your own work and you have to redo the work that the student engineer or student cadet is doing? So those are the questions that we always have to struggle with. Incidentally, who of you guys have cadets that work in your offices?
I've got 3 at the moment.
None here.
And performance-wise, how do those guys rate? Are they really up there? Do you find that it takes a lot of time to bring them up to standard?
No, well, they're in their 3rd and 4th years of engineering at the moment, so they're quite bright and willing to learn. It's just assessing their capabilities so that you can delegate some work to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to try and pick out bits of your workload that you can give to them without having like a lot of the background information before you hand it over to them.
Mm. No, that's really a good point. Interestingly enough, there was a newspaper article on Monday in the Australian saying that students or grade 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 school students are actually suffering stress because they don't know if they will be able to actually perform in the workplace. So it seems that the younger people are also starting to worry about that. It's not only the generation Y that's worrying about performance in the workplace. So obviously it's starting to get younger and younger. In the Australian context, I see coming from a different country, for me it's strange to see really young people behind the cash register at the hardware shop. I see people that's they look, I don't know, 10, 12 maybe, but obviously they're older. But it's strange to see those people really young, working at such an early age. The other thing that's interesting is school kids that are really obnoxious during the school day. Later on during the same day, the afternoon, you'll find them at Bunnings behind the cash register, and they'll be very professional and very friendly. So it's always interesting to see how people can adapt to the situation at hand. So thinking about that previous slide, number 4 there. Alright, so the leadership styles that we have, and this is the one that I have in question number 2, George. So this is the one where you've asked a question about, have anybody seen these terms before? Just a quick thing, I did a quick Google search on that, and if you just type in Google Theory X authorization or authoritarian management style, you'll come up with a number of it. So I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but what you should see at the moment is just a Google page over there, and you can see there's a number of hits on just that simple topic there. Alright, but what we'll do tonight is I'll just give you the crux of the matter. So basically, what is the base of Theory X? It assumes basically that people are lazy, and it assumes that nobody wants to do the work and they're only there because it's a job and it pays the bills. Right? So no real decisions want to be made, no capability or capacity to make those decisions. And the thing about Theory X is that it typically resides with one person. So your typical, thinking back to last week's session when we talk about the traditional organizational structure in companies, this would typically fit right in there. We have one sort of superpower that makes all the decisions and have all the vision, and it forces it down to the subordinates. Alright, so the style of management that we see under Theory X is basically direct. You will do this, you will conform. There's no participation, there's no decision-making process. Alright, so it's one person taking his decisions through, making sure that everybody conforms to that decision. Alright, so sometimes you'll see that there's a little bit of resistance to that, and typically we see that in the industry at the moment. If you think about the union action during the last couple of days, yesterday there was some interesting developments in the union area where one group said that the power of the employers have been diluted too far, and therefore they cannot operate anymore. And then of course the unions came back and said, no, that's not true. We work for a better environment for our members. Alright, so it's always interesting to see the table tennis games that these guys play with each other. Alright, so contrary to Theory X, then of course Theory Y would then be the opposite of that, where we have a democracy, basically a participation between the different role players and the parties. We assume, if we follow Theory Y, that people are self-directed and they can make their own choices. They're well versed and they'll go and do some research on information that they need before they make the decisions that they have to make. And of course they are keen to perform. Alright, so I think, Raymond, you said that you guys have a number of students working for you in their 4th year, and that they are keen to perform and do the job. Alright, so that's typically what we assume in a Theory Y sort of environment. The styles that we have there is we ask for participation. So big teamwork thing, making sure everybody is on board. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Sharing of ideas, all of that comes to play when Theory Y is there. Really trusting. Alright, so we trust when we issue an instruction, we trust that they will go out and do it, and we don't have to check on them, and we if there's a deadline, we know that that deadline will be made. Alright, so all of that stuff, it's based on the assumption that people are keen to perform and that they are able to perform. Alright, so the how do we guide people in that style? It's like using one of those big floor polishers in the old days. I'm not sure if you guys used it ever. As a student, I used to polish floors in a factory, and this polisher, it had two little handles. So if you wanted to go right, you would click the right handle, and left you would click the other one. So typically guiding where you want the situation to go and where you want the people to go. Alright, then the motivation, different ways of motivation. Instead of punishing and penalties, make sure that you motivate. So thinking about contracting, if we have penalty clauses for late completion, damages, delay damages, anything like that, why don't we have an incentive for early completion as well? So I always, in my contracts that I have, I try to work both sides, see it from both the contractor and the employer's point of view, and make sure that you don't penalize only. Alright, so try and get it both ways. Alright, so then of course the Japanese, they always have to get in there and be better than everybody else. Alright, and they theory Z, they go for zero defect. Alright, so zero defect in the early 90s became really the sort of buzzword, like project management became the buzzword in the 1980s. Zero defect with Toyota and Nissan really came to the fore, and I think is it Panasonic or one of those Japanese companies, they actually coined the zero defect in all of their advertisements. So what is it all about? It's about logic and keeping it simple. If you go to Toyota or any of the Toyota plants, you'll see that for each vehicle that they have, Lexus or Camry or any of those, the full diagrammatic layout for that vehicle will fit onto an A4 piece of paper. So that means that they've really got their act together and they know exactly where everything goes, really organized, logical methodologies that they have. They also don't waste time with keeping stock too far ahead of time, so just in time. Their planning is really well in that sense. Obviously natural disasters has its influence on that, so the tsunami in Japan obviously sort of upset their apple cart a little bit, but it's interesting to see how quickly those guys got back on their feet. While the earthquake and everything happened there, and the nuclear power plant was damaged, you might have received an email showing that a section of road was washed away, completely damaged during the earthquake, and how quickly within 48 hours that highway was repaired. Alright, we still need to see that kind of performance over here. Alright, so leading professionals, and this is typically where you guys will fit into. If you're not already in a management position, this will definitely come your way later in life. Because of the work that you've done, because of the education that you have, and because of the circles that you keep. Right, so always make sure that the plan is well objectified. You know exactly where you want to go. You know exactly what it's going to be the outcome of it, what and how. So those are really important. Stimulating assignments, and I've had a little bit of feedback about the assignments that I've given you guys. It is interesting and hopefully it is stimulating. It takes you a little bit outside of your comfort zone, takes you a little bit outside of the resource material. Hopefully you've read a few things extra and you take it home and on board, and later in life you'll see, alright, that one stupid assignment that I did about the carbon tax, it actually helped a little bit for me to make this decision. Alright, and there of course once again the guide, that we say we sort of influence people by pointing them in the right direction. So for instance, a strong guide would be something like, with the view of our continuing relationship, don't you want to reconsider your last condition, or something like that when it comes to contracting. Alright, so if we look at the management functions, once again there's our little graph, and what I try to show here is just the differences between the relationship between or the relationship behavior and task behavior. How well do you function in a team? How well or how important is your behavior when it comes to the task execution at hand? Right, so what we'll see over here is if we have a high task and a low relationship scale, it's not the best or the most optical, and similarly over here it's also not the most optical. If we look at the start of a project, typically a project would move in this direction with the team developing as we go along. Alright, so it's important to monitor these things. Change management's always an interesting thing to monitor in big projects, and of course teams. So always keep your finger on it. What you would like to see is basically a balanced situation. So do you want to have a low relationship behavior and a low task behavior, or do you want a balance where it's sort of halfway between the two? Alright, and I'll leave that for you guys to do a little bit of research on, and of course write it up into your assessment item. Alright, this one, you've all seen this. This has been around for many years, Maslow. We'll talk about another one just now, and these are the basics needs. This is Maslow's basic need or hierarchy of needs diagram. And if we start at the bottom, what's the first thing that we need? Food, sleep, clothes, and of course sex and stuff like that. That's always important, and that's one of the most basic needs that you have. Right, the second one that you move up, and this one might vary from where you are in the world. Right, security, safety is maybe a real concern. If you live in Africa, for instance, it might be more important. If you live in Australia, safety and security is sort of implied because of the fact that it's a real safe country and the law and order is really well contained. The third level there is social belonging. Our friends, our recognition, Facebook. Right. Interestingly enough, I read another article the other day that said that we are only about 66% as impressive in real life as opposed to on Facebook. Right. So if you put many photographs on Facebook, I do too, people think, yeah, gee, that guy's really having a great life. Meantime, back at the ranch, it might not be all roses in the garden. Alright, so affiliations, acceptance in work. Right, if we do something and if we perform well, we would like to be accepted, and the approval from our friends and approval from our colleagues really important. Esteem, and the most important one, and this is typically when you self-actualization is typically later in life, when you get to say 40 or 45 or something like that. Might be earlier, might be later. You've got 2.5 kids, you drive a Volvo station wagon, you have a nice house with a picket fence, and you decide to go and do a PhD or decide to go and do some philanthropic work or something like that. You do it for yourself. That self-actualization becomes important later in life. Right, if we...
Is that the midlife crisis, Josh?
Well, you can have multiple midlife crises. I started having... Well, I get bored really quickly. When you think about jobs and stuff, I get bored really quickly. So I did construction for a while, and then went into IT, and I went into logistics, and then I went back into construction. And that midlife crisis, yeah, it's maybe the right term. But it's also, I think it sort of coincides with the empty nest syndrome. Australians tend to have kids really early, get married really early, and by the time you're 45, the house is empty again because your kids have moved out, and suddenly there's no one to care for. So that codependency syndrome starts playing a role there. So, but yeah, you can call it a midlife crisis. You have to fill up your days somehow. So, all right. So there's the other one, Adler. Is ERG, or existence relatedness and growth theory, sort of overlaps with the Maslow basic needs hierarchy. So you can see what I tried to do there is overlap those two, and what he's done is he's just added those two together, or added those three together. All right, so in your assessment items you might bring in a little bit about Maslow, might do a little bit about Adler as well. And there's another author that's really well known, Hertzberg. Might go and Google him a little bit. There's some information in your resource material about his theory as well, when it comes to how people see themselves in conjunction with other people, or in comparison with other people as well. Alright, then there's a real important slide for you. This one talks about the different types of authority that project managers typically have, and there's different ways of seeing this. It might be because of the law. Project manager might because of his position have certain roles and responsibilities and accountabilities that he has to fulfill, and that might be because of the corporate policy or the employment conditions or anything that sits inside an organization. If we think about where I'm sitting as in the university, obviously there's many policies that we have. We even have a policy on policies. So it's because of the position that I fulfill that I have certain executable tasks. Right. When it comes to de facto or reality, it's because of who we are and our experience. All right. So typically, you guys who are going to become building surveyors and building designers and construction managers, it's because of your background, your qualifications that you have. That's where that power comes from. And then, of course, based on the project itself, a project charter might call for a project manager to have a certain type of authority over the budgets, the control, the expenditure, project execution plans, anything like that, managing, coordinating of that whole project. Alright, so on this page, basically, I try to show you the three types of power that you can have for a project manager. Alright, so what you'll need to go and do for your assessment item is you need to go and think about, alright, he's given us a little bit of information on de facto, and he's given us a little bit of information on de jure, so how do we take it further and how can we make it applicable to our own environment, our own scenario. Alright, so the influences of the project management are basically a formal authority because of our position in the organization, and that one sits really high up on top, you know, the triangle when we talk about our organizational structure, because of the position that we're in. If we think about the reward power, there might be a perceived power because there might be a possibility of promotion, salary, bonuses, anything like that. All of those soft issues, it's the soft cash issues that we can have to manipulate and influence people. The same with penalty power. Alright, so that's basically the opposite of reward, and always remember to try and keep those two in balance. If you're going to use the one, always make sure that you have the other one on tap as well, so when the situation changes you can use both of them. Expert power, because of who you are, remember your technical ability and skills, and then of course the last one is maybe the least powerful of them all, and that's just the association with the project manager, or the association with the boss. For instance, if you are seen at regular intervals with the boss eating out in a restaurant, discussing corporate issues, or just on social events, that might be a source of that power. Alright, so the worth of the authority for project managers, basically, if you look at all three of these items, what are we trying to achieve? And it's all about influencing people and executing goals. Alright, so we have goals and ambitions. We want this project to succeed. We've got all the hardware, which is the site and all of the other resources that we need. How do we make this whole thing work? Because we have to use a balance between authority, influence and power to make the people part of the team. They actually have to now start to perform and try and execute our sort of golden plan. Alright, so authority without power obviously is worthless. Alright, so you need to make sure that you have the power as well as the authority. And this is once again linking back, if you're going to answer that question effectively, think about matrix organizations and think about traditional organizations. How do we make sure that there's both authority and power when we have to issue these instructions and decisions to staff? Alright, so how do we motivate people? So the project manager or the senior member will have different avenues to go down. Alright, so basically the old thing about having a carrot ready, making sure that the donkey follows the carrot, opportunities. Alright, so once again, bonuses, advancement, promotions, all of those would be a way of motivating your personnel. And obviously you're going to do this in a professional manner, not openly. Try and do it under cover of professionalism. Alright, so keep them close to your heart, underneath a blanket almost. Alright, if we look about the methodologies that we can do or can use, make sure that the people know that they are well, or that they're going to be well rewarded, that their efforts are appreciated, so they must feel that they belong where they are. Alright, and if they are not appreciated where they are, move them to a spot where they can be appreciated or can perform better. Alright, not always an easy thing to do, but try and get it. It might take a while before you can actually move somebody because of logistical reasons, might be because of bureaucracy in your organization, anything like that. Alright, so about another methodology that we can use, sort of a dirty trick that we play on their minds. So really a positive attitude. Make sure that you always smile and you're always positive, see a positive spin on everything. It's really difficult to not criticize management. You guys might agree with that. And then of course do not overpromise and underdeliver. Alright, so this one typically is one of the key mistakes that we make. Alright, we always like to overpromise because it makes us look really impressive, but once we promise it, we need to be able to deliver as well. If we can't, it comes back to haunt us later on. Alright, so if we look at the general items, once again, make sure everybody knows what's expected of them. So performance expectations, where are we going to go? If you are in a management position where you have to do appraisals, make sure that those are honest and right straight to the point. So when you guys get your assessment item number 1 back, you'll see that in many cases I've written there that you did not have the adequate depth in the discussion, or that you missed this point, or that you did not introduce the legislation. So try and be as honest as possible and say this is how we can move forward from there onwards. Alright, so participation, I'll always invite you guys to participate in these sessions. Yeah, that's my way of inviting you to participate. For you in the workplace, you'll have to think about how can you make this part of the theory Y or theory X. You have to choose one of those two management styles that you're going to choose. Are you going to be authoritarian, or are you going to be participative? Alright, so for external members, and this is not our staff members, these are now our external members to the company or to the project, might be consultants, might be subcontractors, anybody like that. We have to obviously also be able to motivate them and make sure that they are part of the team. Alright, so the approval, acceptance, recognition, there's just a few ideas that I've given you there. Once again, make sure that you don't waste their time with simple assessments or simple assignments that you have to go through, or simple tasks or projects. Make sure that you have the right person for the right job. Alright, you have to choose. Do you want a A-class opportunity with a B-class team, or an A-class team with a B-class opportunity? Alright, so typically I would go for the team instead of the opportunity, because if you have a bad team, the opportunity will slip away in any case. You can always try and wind up an opportunity once you have the team in place. Alright, so if we look at the team building principles, alright, so always it's going to have an influence on the way that we motivate our people and their perception of how wanted they are in the organization. So that group cohesion is really important. Try and keep everybody together, make sure that they know how they fit into the organization, how they fit into the project. Alright, so important for us. Common goals, typically it's all about communication. Like I said last week, if you stop communicating with your partner, soon there will be a suspension of services, and that's typically what happens in projects and organizations as well. Alright, security and protection. This is where we start thinking about job security and stuff like that, longevity of the position, project pipeline. Are we going to have more projects down the line? Are we going to keep the same professional team in place? And then of course transparency in the decision making process. Alright, really important, especially when it comes to the selection of our suppliers and the selection of our subcontractors. If you think about transparency in these things, the open bidding process, tendering, all of that will play a role for us. Right, there's that one again about role definitions. Make sure everybody knows what they're going to do. And then mutual trust and cooperation. You'll see this one is mutual integrity and credibility, but some of the newer contracts in the industry have a clause now that says mutual trust and cooperation between the parties. Alright, and the contract type that I'm thinking about here is the new engineering contract that specifically has that as the very first clause in the contract document. Right, interesting. How are we going to determine if somebody is cooperating, and how are we going to determine if they are operating in mutual trust? Alright, so always interesting to see how they go again. Alright, so we spoke about the delegation earlier on during the evening. So is it easy to delegate? Alright, it becomes easier to delegate if you trust your team members. Alright, if you don't trust your team members, in this case, if the project manager has difficulty in trusting his team members, obviously it's going to be a hassle for him. If you're a project manager that has a preference to be in the execution role or operational role, it's also going to be a difficulty. And the uncertainty and insecurity typically is a resultant of that inability to trust the abilities or the capacity of your team members. Alright, so all of these items will have an influence on the delegation. And then on the person that's receiving the delegation, but maybe there's no capacity, maybe there's no experience, no skill in that area. Always make sure that you have the right person for the right job. Right? So manage that resource pool that you have. Make sure people aren't overloaded. Interestingly enough, a while ago I think I asked you guys for how many projects you think you can manage. Right? In some companies it's up to 18, 20. Effectively, you can't really manage more than 3 or 4 before you start dropping things on the floor. Alright, and the same with the delegation. Alright. On the situation side, alright, so remember we have the original, we've got the delegation, and then of course the situation that we have. If there's any authoritarian type management style, for instance a one-man show policy, or a cowboy type project manager that sits there, it's going to make it really difficult. And then of course the intolerance of incapacity or inability to perform. And then of course, how do critical phases influence the way that we delegate into a project? Sometimes, even though we want to delegate to people, we might find that we're going to keep those roles and responsibilities to ourselves just because we realize that the time frame in which we have to perform won't allow us to pass on or delegate effectively. Alright, and there's the roles and responsibilities there, so you can see once again it's something that goes through all, it's that golden thread that runs from the beginning to the end. If we start noticing negative team building indicators, we need to address those as quickly as possible. And here's a few words that sort of should ring the alarm bells for you. Lack of cooperation, slow action, think about Gandhi, that type of thing. Low performance, clicks, rumors, anything like that. That's an indication that there's some disparity in the group or the team or project team, and that your project might run into trouble. Alright, so it's always important to manage people. Remember what we said right in the beginning, a project's not about the project's actually about the people that work on that project. So the upside of that coin, very effective people, they want to work, they are keen to perform, they are keen to reach the goals, and they are keen to move on to the next project. Alright, so it's always easy to see those things. And if you really think about a team, how long does it take to develop a team? It takes 2 or 3 projects before a team understands how different team members work. And in our industry, that's really difficult to achieve, because it's not likely that you're going to work with the same professional team on each project. Right? Each time that you become part of a team, you're in a different scenario, different personalities, different clashes, different project manager, and all of the situations will be different. So you have to adapt to that. Thinking back to that very first slide where Tim said that he's more task orientated, in that case perhaps the best would be to say, yep, I can adapt to that. When my task is up, I'll adapt to the situation and I'll make sure that I fit in there. Alright, so there's a few notes for you guys on assessment item number 2. You've been really quiet tonight, so have you got any questions?
Yeah, I have one, Joshua.
Alright, go for it.
I don't. It's not necessarily related to the slides you did tonight. Just reading through the course material in the study guide, I sometimes have trouble figuring out which week's reading corresponds with which topic.
Alright, yes, no, that's true. I tend to jump around because I try and give you guys the right information for the right assessment. So what we did tonight is we did topic 2, unit 2, and I think the heading for that would be workforce management. Alright, so if you page through your study guide, you'll see topic 2, unit 2, if I remember correctly. That should be the right one for you in this case.
2 to 5.
What's that page number, George?
I think it's the 2 to 5 or something like that.
Yeah, there we go. Yep, there we go. So on page 2-15 of your study guide, you should find, and remember, I try and add some more things in here, so you'll find certain information in your study guide and resource material, and during these sessions I'll just add stuff in as we go along, stuff that I found helpful during the last couple of years as I moved along. So specifically, if you look on page number 2-21, at the top of that page there's our leadership theories and the styles that we've got, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and remember I spoke about Hertzberg. There's Hertzberg's indication of his hygiene factors. Alright, so there you can see how I try and link it in. So I agree, previous presentations I did not put on the front slide the topics, so from now on I'll add that on to make it a little bit easier for you to find what I'm talking about. Alright, so do you guys have any other questions? Annette?
Question for you, Josh.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of project management in my time. So I'm quite confident I can write about like the authority and management styles, team building, communications, just based on like the project management, that's PMBOK, stuff that I've been exposed to before. Do we need to discuss all these 3 different theories and 3 different types of authority as well? Or is that just like a pointer?
That's a pointer. That's it's basically a pointer, and what you can do is you can maybe in your assessment item include 1 or 2 paragraphs, just making sure that you introduce the 3 theories and your understanding of it, and then take that the next section of question 2 would be, in my organization, in my personal experience, this is what I found, and this is how it's applicable to my personal situation. And that would be perfect. That's basically, I'm trying, what I want from you is to show me what your personal experience is and how do you see this finding application in your day-to-day work. Alright. So Annette, you've been really quiet tonight. Normally you type away, and tonight I've only had a hello. So have you got any questions for us? Or anybody else for that matter? Alright, so Annette says no questions. Alright, so if you guys don't have any questions, just remember the assessment is due on the 12th of December, which is really soon. It's already the 1st today, so it's about just under 2 weeks. So yeah, get going. And if you have any questions for next week, George specifically, I see you're quite a prolific poster in the forums. I like seeing student interacting there. So if you guys have any questions, just post it onto the forum, and then I'll be able to respond to that.
Okay, well, I'll make even more questions and queries to everyone else during the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, the thing is that it's difficult to get the other students to start participating. And what's strange for me is we've got 30 students in the class, of which 28 has submitted assignments. And strange enough, this is the best performance I've had since arriving at the university. Only 2 late assignments, the rest all on time, no hassles, no extension requests, no funnies, and that's really amazing, you know. And I think the next step would be to try and get everybody to sort of participate in the forums and discussions, and you know, make these sessions that we have at night a little bit more fun. You know, maybe get 1 or 2 of you guys to do a short presentation. So if you have something that you want to share with the group, maybe tell me, and I'll give you 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of next week, and you jump away and take control and do your presentation. You know, so that's.
Well, if any of the other students can think of any way in which the weekly sort of hookup can become stimulating, I reckon they should let us all know.
Yeah, no, for sure. So think about that, and yeah, let's see if we can make it better. All right. So no more questions. Shall we call it a night?
Okay, have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, George. Thanks, everyone.
See you, Joshua.
Thanks, Joshua.
See you later.
See you later.
Yeah.